Yeah, as you all know, we're in a time of a huge paradigm shift in mobility. We have had now a decade of fossil fuels, which stem from somewhere in the world. We fuel our cars and trucks and everything, but now we have a shift in various stages. We have a shift from street transport to railroad transport. We have a shift from fossil fuels to sustainable fuels. And all those aspects, or part of them, we will address in the next 20 minutes. Andreas, you have a huge head, so to speak, on. You're responsible for all aspects of sustainability at the Deutsche Bahn, not only for the passenger car transport, but for all kinds of freight goods and so on. And also you're responsible for noise reduction also of the railroad. Wow, congratulations for this huge topic. So what is your vision and your strategy? How do you want to fulfill all these expectations on your shoulders?
Yeah, thank you very much, Christopher. Indeed, it's a huge task. Let me start by saying that the driving force for us at Deutsche Bahn is to take our share of responsibility to leave our kids, our grandchildren, a planet behind that is as lovely, as wonderful, as great as the one that has been handed down to us by our parents. And that's an enormous task, which has actually, for us, two sides. One side is that we know that we have to shift an immense number of people and goods from the street, and the air to the climate-friendly railway system. That's the only way how to achieve the climate protection goals of Germany, of this government, and of Europe as well. That's one side. So we have to make attractive offers. We have to build the right infrastructure for this shift from the street to the railway system. The other side is that we have to do this in a green and an eco-friendly way. And therefore, we are undergoing a green transformation at Deutsche Bahn, and that is a holistic approach. We are looking, of course, at climate protection. That's key, we all know that. But it's also about, as you already mentioned, it's noise reduction, because we have got a lot of people living alongside our tracks. It's about biodiversity. It's about resource protection. So we are on a way to a really life cycle economy. And it's about our responsibility for social issues. So we got our foundation, we got the Travelers Aid Society. So that's the whole package which we're working on. And the headline is the green transformation. And to achieve all this, we adopted a new company strategy last year, the Strong Rail strategy, and we're working on that.
Wow. You might not know this number. He's in charge of transporting 1 billion people per year just in the short distance railroad. Long distance is approaching 200 million, maybe not this year, but last year. So that's a huge effort, and to make this sustainable, even on top of it. Now we come to the street transport. BMW is very committed to sustainability in each respect, not only changing the fuel from fossil fuels to electrons, so to speak, but also having the whole circular economy implemented with all the delivery chains and so on. Irene, she's the person responsible for all these aspects and describing the paradigm shift. Irene, so what's your vision on and BMW's vision on sustainable transport, road connected?
Sure. So when it comes to the modes, how people travel on the different modes, that's what you've been talking about, mode shift before. So there's always been this notion of bringing people away from the car and from the road. What is happening during this corona crisis at the moment is exactly the opposite. So people from all different kinds of considered public transport modes are coming to the car, and also from the plane, of course, a lot of people coming to the car, which means that this very successful mode is growing in share at the moment, and we also expect that there will be long-term shift also from the plane especially to the car, which we also saw during September 11, that in the aftermath of the September 11 events, a lot of people shifted from the plane to the car, and it stayed in the US. And so I think this is also some shift will stay, which means that getting the car sustainable becomes even more important. And how are we going to do this? We have a very aggressive climate strategy, which was communicated in July, and it actually tackles the whole life cycle. So as we move towards building many more electric cars, this also means that you have a shift of CO2 emissions from the use phase to the production phase, because you need all the energy to produce the battery, which is extremely energy intensive. And if you do not do anything, your emissions from production will strongly increase. So we need to address this challenge with our suppliers, and we will reduce emissions from our suppliers by 20% until 2030 for each car, which is tremendously, if you consider otherwise they would grow per car because it's an electric vehicle. We will reduce our own emissions of scope 1 and 2 by 80% until 2030. We will be CO2 neutral in the production by next year. So we will offset all our own emissions that still remain. And we will reduce CO2 emissions per kilometer driven by 40% until 2030. And what makes this special is maybe not only the numbers, but that we will tackle this challenge together with our suppliers. So what we want to achieve is that we get sustainable steel, for example, and we want to push suppliers into this direction so that there's a whole push from us and hopefully also others that push the suppliers into this direction, so that it's not only everything that we buy ourselves, but that we have like an initial step towards getting them on a much more sustainable road, and then maybe not only our steel is sustainable, but steel bought by others as well, because if you scale these operations, of course, then all these resources that are produced in a more sustainable way will become cheaper. So that's the idea behind it, to take a lot of suppliers and people in industries with us on this road to sustainability.
Wow, big target.
Yeah. May I come in and here? Because just what you said, that makes one thing very clear. It's not a single-minded discussion about whether the street is the good one or the trains, the railway system is. It shows that all of us have to go green.
Yep.
Got to produce in a sustainable way. We are have the same discussion as you just said. And if we really want to become climate neutral by 2050, we have to work together, and the street and the railway system have to become climate neutral.
Yeah, and it's in the mindset also. Yeah. So you need to take everyone in the company on this journey. And that's the big transformation step that I think is probably the biggest challenge, is to take everyone on this road, because there will be people who don't want to follow.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, what we did is to enact this in the management remuneration. So top executives will see it in their pay, whether they will tackle the climate challenge, yes or no, because they will be measured every year if they succeed in achieving the goals that are set. So we have a 10-year plan, and all the top management will be measured against these targets every year. And I'm sure this is going to help for everyone.
Yeah, no doubt the pressure is on. And also I see a very peaceful collaboration and coexistence, of course, of all the transport sectors.
You brought me here on time today.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially,
day.
one of your targets is also, I mean, coming from running trains is one thing, but now you're moving toward a mobility service provider in a very broad sense, door to door. So how, there of course you need the streets anyway, so, but how do you want to manage this transformation to a door-to-door mobility provider?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Okay. Any
we see, we see this dramatic change in the way transport and mobility works out. I mean, people a couple of years ago just want to be traveled or transported from station A to station B. Now we're talking about, really, as you said, door-to-door mobility. So we need solutions for the famous last mile. That's one point. And the other new development is that mobility is much more perceived as a service. It's much more about using and less about ownership. So we have to tackle those two new developments. So it's much more than electrification that's important. It's much more than climate neutral drive systems. So we, for example, developed in Hamburg a shuttle service that runs without any fixed schedule, that runs around the clock, and which you can just order as a part of the Hamburg transport system. And that's a first step into this new mobility and this new door-to-door service that we give to people.
Yeah. Maybe a quick word about a customer, because you can think, and CEO Zipse can have big visions, but how susceptible is your customer? Because at a certain point it might change also the whole operational system of your, as you say, away from ownership to renting cars, but also cars, of course, if you think it to the end, will be at the end of the day more expensive, because if all CO2 costs are included to the product, so the product has a true value in terms of cost. So I guess, what do your studies say how your customer will respond to your thinking and your strategy?
First thing the customer wants is peace of mind. He doesn't want to think. And he wants to actually to get the responsibility to us. So we need to take care for the fact that the product is clean. Mm-hmm. So that's what the customer wants. No hassle and no thinking about it, and being sure that the product is good also to the environment. So what we say is that there's no premium without responsibility. So this includes your responsibility. When it comes to the CO2 costs, actually the CO2, if you think of an electric car, because of the much higher energy efficiency of an electric car, at the end, the overall costs will be lower, because the costs during the use phase are so much lower than they are today. So you can add even some parts in the production phase for the CO2 that accrues during the production. But as we reduce these CO2 anyway, so I don't expect there are many costs to come from that corner. And on the other hand, it will be made up by what you save during the use phase, because of the much higher energy efficiency. If you get an energy efficiency which is much higher than around 90%, as compared to at best 40% today, so there is where the money actually is buried. So even at the moment, over the whole life cycle, the cheapest cars that we offer are electric cars, if you factor in what you pay for gas during the use phase.
Yeah, depending on how you calculate the total cost of ownership.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a total cost of ownership approach, at the moment you would go for an electric car, fully electric car even.
When you, as a global premium player, of course you're competing with the rest of the world in terms of OEMs, and how can you make sure that you stay competitive if others are not quite as ambitious as you are?
If others are not quite as ambitious as we are, that of course gives us a tremendous gain in competition advantage. And I mean, what we are doing at the moment is we try to address the different demands from each market by having a flexible production system, which means that we can produce every drivetrain in every production plant. And so if there is higher demand for one kind of drivetrain, we can rather easily switch, which means that at the moment, for example, there's a very high demand for all kinds of electric cars, which means that we can also produce electric cars in a plant that was originally designed for producing combustion engines. So we can switch, and this gives us the flexibility, which is very important if you're in an industry with very high capital costs.
Okay, thank you. Talking about...
May I add just one more thing to the cost aspect? Of course, that's important. But beside that, we have to build attractive mobility offers as well. So, and if we create that, the cost problem will, I'm sure, be solved in a way. But those two things have to go hand in hand. Without attractive offers, like the sprinter distance between Berlin and Munich, a lot of people are using this, but they could only use it after we've built it.
Right. And of course, your strong asset is you can use green electrons as a fuel, which the whole world is ramping up renewable energy to electrons. And this is your backbone, so to speak. Yeah? I'm afraid if I take this serious, our time is pretty much over. It was my sincere pleasure to have you for this quick snapshot towards sustainability. Big tasks ahead of you for both of you, but a challenge is always a good thing to have. Thank you again for having you, and thank you for your time, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.